Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and the Moon is 22ing in Taurus, ascendant ruled by the Sun, and the Venus with Jupiter in the 12th house ruling the midheaven. Moon hour, Mars night, and continuing on, I talked about the burning of the books. I want to talk a little bit about the cult of personality, because the cult of personality is a part of where those rituals are done, and it's something that blends people into one another and can create a very deep connection, by the way. And yet the loss of sovereignty or boundaries has a trajectory. It creates anger, it creates animosity. It's a juxtaposition of extreme polarities. And many of the teachings that we have are the result of that, such as teachings about that everything is above, as above, so below, that everything is projection, that everything is like attract like, and at the same time opposite attract. And those things are not untrue, and the engineering with them is not something that doesn't yield things. And yet there is a trajectory. For example, I'm a relational astrologer. As I see As I grow, I see deeper facets and intricacies around relations and learn more in my life as well. So when it comes to recovery from the cult of personality, which is essential for sovereignty, recovery from ritual abuse, which is essential for sovereignty. Sovereignty is essential for the recovery, something that supports the sovereignty, and then the recovery is essential for sovereignty. Okay? And that's the breaking from the 22 catch that we are doing as humanity. And so for the sovereign self to identify itself, and I can give you a conversation that I had with a psychologist that was absolutely MK Ultra, like and they worked with children, and so in that conversation I was writing a satire, and then my friend at the time had a joke about a lady. She was calling someone in certain nickname, and I was calling her the girl of for that person, and I was joking at the fact that she was asserting her sovereignty through a how should I say that very elegantly? It's a jab. She was using flattery and the appeal to authority or to the ego, to stroke someone's ego, but she was as much trying to assert her sovereignty as she was puppeteered and puppeteering in that sense. I think this was Hamkan, okay? This was really more evasion than that. It cannot be. And so those who noticed the jabs between the energy, it was not intended. The funny thing, the jabs are hardly ever intended by me, at least. And so, and so I was putting that joke into the satire. My friend did not want to be mentioned. They wanted to evade credit and responsibility. And then she tried to litigate me for sexual harassment, even though the joke was about her not stopping my own sexual harassment and her own. Eventually, it would be on Valentine's Day that we would diplomatically sort this out through emails. But the issue is, and she said that she was triggered whenever my name is being mentioned, and I was like, there is an easy cure for that. But the thing is that it was a discussion, and I was talking about with my psychologist, and he said, "How did you feel when the notion of sexual harassment was pointed at you?" And I'm like, "Well, I said that. It was my friend's joke, but I wrote that in that satire." And he was completely baffled because I was taking full accountability for what I did and what I said and what I intended in that. And naturally, the intention behind that was not to try to enslave or subjugate someone, but to use the tool of satire to expose the facets of society that need to change. And so, which is also the how and why I managed to sell, other than the fact that I was right, but but it's also why I managed to settle that. And and the issue was that I was I was not trying to say, but I didn't do it, or this is that, or there. Why do you call it like that? Why you this? Why you that? Like, well, this is what I did. This is the intention. Very likely, I could have phrased myself better. Perhaps it was a stupid idea to take the joke of my friend and put it into the satire. It seemed like a good idea at the time. In retrospective, I still think I was right. Okay, she was doing what I said in the satire that she was doing, and by that she was puppeteering herself, being the girl of um, and and trying to use okay, things that would not actually get her the sovereignty that she wanted and that's the point. But the thing is, for the people that are committing certain offenses, the discernment in what is the self and what is the other is important for their health and recovery, and for their life to actually yield. And to try to push the blame, you see adult people pushing the blame upon a child rather than tending to the system of things. And there are sources, there are people that are ritual abuse survivors that talk about for what they had to do and so on and so forth. Okay, when they did, for example, rituals on me, then it means that they were doing very likely something that to invoke my energy, and then try to take on my energy that is not me, but somebody else take the shape of me, will trying to do rituals. Okay, that obviously is not me with my consent, and that obviously they took the shape of my energy to try to perform things that I don't know about. And it happens to people a lot. While I was being tortured. And then what happens? I become sovereign, call my energy back, and the Tower of Cards again falls. And then they try to have intervals to keep doing those rituals so that something will sustain. But this is very rocky foundations. Okay, think about why intergenerational wealth doesn't hold past the third generation, is that if people are doing those rituals It's not going to sustain. But it is both indigenous and non-indigenous. People talk about the Rothschild, the Rockefeller. Finally, we can talk about this, about that. I'm like, yeah, but what about the indigenous people practicing the same practices? And then I say, oh, well, these people, they took our practices from us. I'm like, well, if you were practicing enslaving people, and then the people that come and they say, well, the world is going towards abolishing of slavery, and they grow more and more sovereign, and they support more and more sovereignty, then towers of cards fall around them. Okay? And the golems that they create become sovereign. So, okay. Now, when people use altered drugs or altered states of consciousness, or even, there is psychic attack, and there is also people taking psychedelics from afar. There was actually a research in a university, I think it was, I don't know if it was Alberta University, that did a research about the spiritual warfare. And so both the ritual rape that is happening from afar and the use of psychedelics from afar, okay, the induced psychosis. I said what I said. Saturn Neptune is mass psychosis. Um, and so the discernment in which is the self is actually rather important. Now, people like me, that certain rituals were done and mixed notes to me, very likely from afar, and then the mannerisms and the expression and the consciousness is unified, but is also distinct. This is Neptune in Aries. And so you see, if you tell a person, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you don't tell them what it says, and what the person is channeling, they explore and they see, okay, that's interesting. Now let's put my intention to that. And then they try to go against the intention of the sovereign. Then what happens? They try to shift the blame. Also doesn't work, because sovereignty requires consciousness. And so what happens in this chaos of personality, so to speak, is that the chaos dissolves. And all the attempts to entangle and to this and to that and control every facet of that, they also dissolve. And what people thought to gain from that, then it ends up with humanity talking about the Rothschilds and Rockefellers again, And also remembering that those practices are inherently indigenous, and the problem here is not plagiarism but the practice. Now, it is plagiarism in a sense where one person intends good, but somebody else tried to divert it to do bad. Or somebody has a good intention with a certain practice, and then somebody tries to tweak the intention. They do certain things, something comes to tweak the intention. This is how the Mormons got exposed for human trafficking, together with Opus Dei and the Pope in Pluto and Aquarius when Saturn meets Neptune. For the MK Ultra stuff. Okay? The Soviet Union is kind of global now. Now there are facets, there are degrees of sovereignty, degrees of consciousness, where people have to learn through the fragmentation and trying to unify things. They learn about that cosmology anew. And all the things that people did in the secret, in their secret societies, in rites, in this, in that, with hidden agendas, hidden beliefs, hidden this, hidden that, they all come to the forefront. I said what I said when Pluto ingressed into Aquarius. Okay? It's the time of the loges. And when Neptune ingressed into Aries, the raising of the tariffs, I said the wealth was transitioned from Pluto to Neptune, which means that with the ingress and now with Saturn on the world degree, is people will have to surrender what were they intending to happen with the collapse. Particularly those that were reliant on controlling each and every facet of human life. Think about the Soviet Union. It was such a cradle to the grave. Trying to control every single facet of human life. It was one giant human experiment. Whether it's belief, it's practice, it's action, okay, all these things. And it collapsed gigantically. Because it was trying to control every single facets of every single person's lives. That's a recipe, because what happens is essentially you have to, even when I think about the self, okay, let's say you build something, a build half moon, okay, I surrender, I don't know what will happen. I know it's supposed to have rain somewhere and then something will grow, I don't know what will grow. Okay, there's a certain side of surrendering the results, letting go. But the people that try to control over the result, but those people will have to let go, okay, of that grasp, of trying to grasp onto another person's sovereignty. Think about Kronos was trying to eat his children so that they wouldn't surpass Kronos. But it's not. It means that to begin with, you should not have created those children, if that is the mindset. And then Frankenstein was trying to terminate his creation. Okay, it's all the golem. It's all based on the golem, the creation of the golem. My psychologist tried to do ritual abuse to me with creating the golem and getting me into the child state. Talking about the creator and the creation, or me being the creation of the creator, and doing all kinds of weird rituals. That's a freaking cult. What he does with the children at the emergency centers, I don't know, but under which maybe tunnels. And he has a personality that tried to expose that. That's just life. No. Because Pluto is nearing the 1 degree Aquarius, where it would turn direct. So the science of psychology, but also of occult. What was hidden is coming to the forefront. It's leaking. And the thing is, because of dissociation, many people are not even aware of the many things that were happening there. As basically the personalities of my psychologist were trying to traffic me. I sit in the room and I'm like, I feel energy, American energy, the land of the free. But you're American. He says, no. They're being mind controlled. That's MK Ultra in Israel. I was talking about the Mars square Pluto and the fact it's a military operation. And then certain personalities of the person would try to remediate or create peace, and certain personalities. Trafficking does not yield peace. Very simply put, it yields perpetual war. I don't know if it was like an Epstein thingy, but and even if it means that he had handlers and that he was handler to people. And that was in academia as well. And it goes way back. So it means that many of us have all kinds of beings and people that we never personally met, and are involved in all kinds of things. And this is while people just try to live their life, have their sovereignty, have a place to stay, um, make a life while making a living. And every time they remember things, they try to make them forget things. And so when it comes to the cult of personality, actually the remembrance. Now this is the thing. The use of names and naming in the rituals is also important, because if they, let's say, a boy rape a boy and they have to call the boy a whore. Now, that boy, he will, everything that reminds him of himself, he will call a whore. And so, but of course, he doesn't want to be with a whore. And then when people, actually during the Me Too, they shifted. They said, well, if there is a whore, then there is, the Hebrew word was zanai, which is for the person that rapes the trafficked person, basically. And, or if there is a borderline histrionic woman, there is a narcissistic psychopathic man. Okay, and that was the to counteract the names. Like, you can't be doing all these things and not be expected to be called bad names, but you can't be blaming the people that you raped for their rape, and those people that were raped had handlers. And then people are told that they have a kink or they have a fantasy, but in fact is not their fantasy and not their kink. So the access to the self, it's like, where is the self within all these rituals? And that discernment is important. And then as that discernment grows, it's like, okay, if it's not my kink, I'm not actually, when I look into what I sexually enjoy, is other things completely. So whose kink was that? And why? Why these fantasies? Were those things actually happening? Well, according to testimonies, they were happening to people. What was the idea of getting a child to see those things and play with their bodies?